The receipt was for $186.42. Nothing remarkable about it. A ribeye, sparkling water, 2 coffees, 1 untouched. Yet before the night was over, that thin strip of paper would cost Nathan Brooks a wedding, a friendship, and the comfortable illusion that he knew the people closest to him. At 10:38 on a Friday night, Chicago glittered beyond the tall windows of Bellamy's, all wet pavement and reflected headlights after an early spring rain. Inside, dinner service was winding down. Silverware clinked softly. Low conversations blended with the muted notes of an old piano recording. Nathan sat at table 12 in a charcoal suit, his Swiss watch catching the amber light as he glanced at the document beside his plate. Across from him, Vanessa Cole smiled while Daniel Reed uncapped a black fountain pen. "One signature," Daniel said. "Then Monday becomes a formality." Nathan reached for the pen. 3 tables away, Emily Carter stopped walking. She held a small leather check presenter against her black apron. Her face remained calm, but her fingers tightened around its edge. For the past 6 hours, Emily had carried plates, refilled water glasses, remembered allergies, found a lost scarf, and apologized for a steak she had not overcooked. She had been nearly invisible to the people seated beneath Bellamy's crystal lights. She preferred it that way. Invisible people heard things. They noticed things. And 21 minutes earlier, Emily had noticed something she could not forget. Nathan lowered his eyes toward the signature line. Emily moved. Her shoes made almost no sound against the polished floor. Daniel saw her first. "We're good, thanks." Emily did not leave. She placed the check presenter directly over the document, covering the signature line. Nathan looked up. For the first time that evening, he truly looked at her. White shirt, black vest, tired blue eyes that were strangely steady. "Excuse me," he said. Emily opened the presenter and slid the receipt across the table. On the back, beneath the restaurant logo, she had written a single line in blue ink. "Check the security camera. 9:17 p.m. Before you sign anything." Nathan read it twice. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Daniel leaned forward. "What is this?" Emily looked only at Nathan. She knew exactly how this appeared. A waitress interrupting 3 wealthy people at a private table. A stranger inserting herself into a life she knew nothing about. Her manager could fire her before she reached the kitchen. Maybe he would. But Emily had spent too many years remembering what silence could cost. Nathan's expression hardened. What happened at 9:17? For 1 second, the room seemed quieter. Emily could hear the faint hum of the ventilation system. A coffee cup settling onto a saucer. Rain ticking against the glass. Daniel gave a short, impatient laugh. "Nathan, don't entertain this." Emily's gaze never moved. "You don't have to believe me, Mr. Brooks." Nathan's hand remained beside the pen. "Then what exactly am I supposed to believe?" Emily glanced at the unsigned document, then back into his eyes. Her voice stayed soft, almost too soft for the table. "Believe what you can verify." Daniel pushed his chair back. Vanessa reached for Nathan's hand. But Nathan didn't either. He stared at the receipt. At the time written beneath Emily's careful handwriting. 9:17 p.m. Then, slowly, he put the pen down. 3 hours earlier, Emily Carter had been counting small things. Not money, not tips, things most people never noticed. The elderly man at table 4 needed extra lemon, but always forgot to ask. The woman near the window had quietly moved the bread basket away after reading the ingredients. So Emily checked with the kitchen and learned the rolls contained walnuts. At table 9, a nervous young busboy named Tyler dropped a clean fork and froze as if the entire dining room had heard it. Emily simply handed him another one. "Keep moving," she whispered. "Nobody is keeping score." That was how Emily moved through Bellamy's. Quietly, carefully. At 29, she had learned that attention was often more useful than confidence. Her apartment was 12 miles away, above a laundromat where the dryers hummed until midnight. Her car was a 12-year-old Honda that needed 2 tries on cold mornings. Every Tuesday, she stopped at her mother's small house outside the city with groceries and stayed long enough to pretend she was not checking whether the porch steps needed another repair. There was nothing glamorous about Emily's life. She worked. She paid bills. She saved what she could. She called her mother during breaks. She brought leftover pie to Mrs. Donnelly downstairs when restaurant policy allowed it. And she noticed things. At 7:42 that evening, she noticed Nathan Brooks because everyone else noticed him first. The host straightened his jacket. The manager crossed the dining room personally. Tyler whispered that the man entering was worth billions. Emily looked once, then returned to filling a water glass. Nathan arrived alone. He sat at table 12 and placed his phone beside a leather folder. His charcoal suit looked expensive, but exhaustion did not care what a suit cost. He checked his Swiss watch twice in 4 minutes. When Emily approached, he was staring through an email without seeming to read it. "Coffee?" she asked. "Black." Emily glanced at the cup already sitting near his right hand. It had gone cold. "You have not touched the first one." Nathan finally looked up. "How do you know it is cold?" "The cream pitcher beside it is still full, and the surface stopped steaming 10 minutes ago." A faint crease appeared between his eyebrows. Emily expected irritation. Instead, Nathan looked at the cup as though it had betrayed him. "Fresh coffee, then." "That I can do." She replaced it without ceremony. When she returned, 2 more guests had arrived. Vanessa Cole entered first, polished and smiling, followed by Daniel Reed carrying a slim leather briefcase. Nathan stood to greet them. Something in his face changed immediately. The guarded expression disappeared. These were not merely business associates. These were people he trusted. Emily knew that before she knew their names. Vanessa touched Nathan's shoulder with easy familiarity. Daniel called him Nate. Nathan laughed for the first time all evening. Emily set down the fresh coffee and stepped away. At another table, someone needed water. Near the kitchen, Tyler was struggling with a tray. Normal things. Ordinary things. Yet as Emily passed table 12 again, she caught Vanessa looking at Daniel. It lasted perhaps 1 second. Daniel gave the smallest nod. Then both turned back toward Nathan and smiled. Emily kept walking. One glance meant nothing. She knew better than to build stories from fragments. But 20 minutes later, Vanessa checked her phone, excused herself, and walked toward the private hallway beside the service corridor. Daniel remained seated long enough to finish a sentence. Then he stood. "I need to take this call." Nathan barely looked up. Emily did. And for reasons she could not yet explain, she looked at the clock above the kitchen doors. It was 9:15. At 9:15, Nathan Brooks was still talking about Monday. Emily could hear only pieces as she crossed the dining room with a tray balanced against one palm. Closing numbers. Final approval. A signature before noon. To Nathan, the conversation sounded ordinary because Daniel Reed had been part of nearly every important decision in his adult life. 12 years earlier, before Brooks Meridian Logistics had offices in 6 states and contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, Daniel had worked beside Nathan in a rented warehouse with stained ceiling tiles and a heater that barely survived January. They had shared cheap takeout at midnight, argued over spreadsheets, and celebrated their first profitable quarter with grocery store champagne. Daniel had been there before private drivers, magazine profiles, and conference rooms overlooking Chicago. That history mattered to Nathan. Perhaps too much. He believed loyalty accumulated like interest. The longer someone stayed, the harder it became to imagine them leaving. Vanessa Cole had entered his life much later, but she had arrived during the year Nathan needed someone most. His father, Robert Brooks, had died after a long illness, leaving Nathan with a company expanding faster than he could manage in a house that suddenly felt too quiet. Vanessa had never tried to impress him with his own success. She brought dinner when he forgot to eat. She sat beside him at family gatherings when conversation became uncomfortable. She remembered his father's birthday without being reminded. When Nathan proposed 18 months later, he had not thought of it as taking a risk. He had thought of it as finally choosing something permanent. Now Vanessa's engagement ring caught the restaurant light whenever she lifted her wine glass. Her wedding to Nathan was 7 weeks away. Daniel was supposed to stand beside him at the ceremony. If anyone had asked Nathan that evening to name the 2 people he trusted most, their names would have come before the question was finished. Emily knew none of that history. She only knew what people revealed when they believed the waitress was not listening. At 9:16, she carried a tray toward the service corridor. The hallway beyond it connected the private dining rooms to a side exit and a small office used by management. Vanessa stood near the end of it, partially hidden by a decorative wall. Daniel approached from the opposite direction. Emily slowed, not because she intended to listen, but because Vanessa was holding something Emily had seen earlier on Nathan's table. A small silver flash drive. Daniel stopped beside her. "You have everything?" His voice was low. Vanessa nodded. "Everything he sent me." Daniel glanced toward the dining room. Emily stepped behind the service station and began arranging clean glasses. She could have walked away. She almost did. Then Vanessa said, "I still hate doing it this way." Daniel answered so quietly Emily had to remain still to hear him. "There is no other way now." Vanessa looked down at the flash drive. "He trusts you. He trusts both of us." Daniel paused. "That is why he will sign." Emily's hand stopped over a water glass. Vanessa looked toward the ceiling, and Emily followed her gaze. A small security camera sat above the hallway entrance, its green indicator light steady. Then Daniel said the words that changed the evening. "Once Nathan signs Monday, he will not be able to undo it." No raised voices. No dramatic confession. Just one sentence spoken in the calm tone people used when discussing plans already decided. Emily lowered her eyes. The printer beside the service station suddenly clicked. A receipt slid out. Table 12. She tore it free automatically. At the bottom, beneath the total, the timestamp read 9:17 p.m. When Emily looked back, Daniel was placing the silver drive inside his jacket pocket. Vanessa straightened her dress and walked toward the dining room first. Daniel waited another 30 seconds before following. By the time Emily returned to table 12, Vanessa was smiling again. Daniel was asking Nathan about a golf trip they had taken years earlier. Nathan looked relaxed, safe, completely unaware. Emily set down a glass of sparkling water. "Thank you," Nathan said without looking up. She moved away, but the receipt remained folded inside her apron. For the next hour, Emily argued with herself while serving dessert, clearing plates, and refilling coffee. She had no proof of what the flash drive contained. She did not know what Nathan was signing. She did not know whether Daniel and Vanessa had legitimate reasons for meeting privately. She knew only what she had heard. In ordinary life, truth rarely arrived complete. Usually it came as a detail that did not fit. A glance held too long. A sentence spoken too softly. A timestamp printed when no one expected it to matter. At 10:34, Daniel opened his briefcase and removed a document. "We can get this out of the way tonight," he said. Vanessa smiled at Nathan. "Then you can actually relax this weekend." Nathan reached for the fountain pen. Emily stood near the coffee station, watching his hand move toward the paper. She thought of her job, her rent, her mother. She thought of how ridiculous she would sound if she were wrong. Then she remembered something her father used to say before trusting the wrong person had cost him almost everything he had saved. Silence feels harmless only to the person who does not know the truth. Emily took the receipt from her apron. She found a blue pen, and she began to write. Emily wrote only what Nathan needed. No accusation, no explanation, just a time, a place to look, and one request that could still be ignored. She capped the blue pen and folded the receipt once against her palm. Across the room, Daniel had turned the document toward Nathan and tapped a line near the bottom. Vanessa sat beside him, one hand resting near Nathan's coffee cup. From a distance, they looked like three people finishing a successful dinner. That was what made Emily hesitate. Betrayal, she had learned, rarely announced itself. Sometimes it wore a familiar face and knew exactly how you took your coffee. Nathan picked up the fountain pen. Emily crossed the room. Daniel noticed her approaching and gave the polite smile reserved for someone whose presence was no longer required. "We are finished, thank you." Emily stopped beside Nathan. "Of course, sir." She placed the leather check presenter over the signature line. Nathan's eyes lifted. "I have not asked for the check." "I know." Emily opened the presenter and pushed the receipt toward him. He read her message. The change in his expression was almost invisible, but Emily saw it. His eyes moved first to the time, then to her, then to Daniel. Vanessa withdrew her hand from the table. "What is going on?" Nathan asked. Emily kept her voice low. "I think you should wait before signing that." Daniel leaned back. "You think?" The warmth had disappeared from his voice. "Nathan, she has no idea what this document is." "That is true," Emily said. Daniel seemed surprised by the answer. "Then why are you interrupting us?" "Because I heard something at 9:17. Vanessa's face became still. Nathan noticed. Emily noticed him noticing. "What did you hear?" he asked. Emily chose her words carefully. Mr. Reed and Ms. Cole were in the service hallway. There was a silver flash drive. "I heard Mr. Reed say that once you signed Monday, you would not be able to undo it." Daniel gave a quiet laugh, but Nathan did not join him. "That is your evidence?" Daniel asked. "A sentence you overheard while carrying plates." Emily looked at him. "No, That is why I told Mr. Brooks to check the camera. Daniel's jaw tightened. Vanessa turned toward Nathan. There is an explanation. Nathan looked at her for several seconds. I have not asked you for one yet. The words were calm. That made the silence afterward heavier. Emily felt her manager watching from near the host stand. She knew tomorrow's schedule could disappear with one complaint. Still, she remained where she was. Daniel closed the folder. This is absurd. We can handle it. Monday. His hand moved toward the document, but Nathan placed his palm on it first. Leave it. Daniel stared at him. Nate. Leave it. Vanessa lowered her voice. Nathan, please. You are letting a stranger create suspicion over something she does not understand. Nathan glanced at Emily. She is not asking me to trust her. Emily said nothing. Nathan looked down at the receipt again. She is asking me to verify it. For the first time, Daniel had no immediate answer. Nathan stood and buttoned his jacket. He looked toward the manager. Who has access to your security footage? The manager hurried over. I do, Mr. Brooks. Is there a problem? Nathan picked up the receipt and slipped it carefully into his wallet. I do not know yet. Vanessa stood. Nathan, this is unnecessary. He looked at her, and something in his face had changed. Not anger, not accusation. The easy certainty was gone. Then the camera will prove that. The manager led him toward the office near the service corridor. Daniel followed. Vanessa hesitated before going with them. Emily remained beside the table, collecting 3 untouched water glasses because she still had a job to do. Tyler approached with a worried expression. Are you in trouble? He whispered. Emily stacked the glasses onto her tray. Probably. Was it worth it? Emily looked toward the hallway where the 4 of them had disappeared. I do not know yet. Inside the small office, the manager entered his password and pulled up the evening recordings. Nathan stood behind him. Daniel crossed his arms. Vanessa said nothing. The manager moved the cursor along the timeline. 9:16 p.m. The hallway was empty. Nathan watched the screen without blinking. The clock advanced. 9:17 p.m. Vanessa entered the frame. 5 seconds later, Daniel appeared from the opposite side. Nathan leaned closer. On the screen, Vanessa reached into her purse. Something silver caught the light. She placed it in Daniel's hand. No audio. No explanation. Just the 2 people Nathan trusted most meeting where neither had told him they would be. Daniel spoke first. Nathan, I can explain. Nathan kept his eyes on the screen. Not yet. He watched Daniel put the flash drive inside his jacket. Then he watched Vanessa return toward the dining room. 30 seconds later, Daniel followed. The recording continued. Nathan stared at the empty hallway after both had disappeared. Then he spoke so quietly that everyone in the office heard him. Show me 9:17 again. Nathan watched the footage 3 times. The first time, he watched Vanessa. The second time, Daniel. The third time, he watched himself in the corner of another camera feed, still sitting at table 12, drinking coffee while 2 people he trusted were meeting less than 40 feet away. The image disturbed him more than he expected. Not because it proved a crime. It did not. Not because it explained the flash drive. It did not. It showed only what Emily had promised it would show. A secret. Nothing more. Sometimes that was enough to make every ordinary detail suddenly feel different. Nathan stepped away from the monitor. Daniel, give me the drive. Daniel exhaled slowly. You are making this larger than it is. Then giving it to me should make it smaller. Vanessa looked at Daniel. There it was again. That brief exchange Nathan would not have noticed 2 hours earlier. Now he saw it clearly. Daniel reached inside his jacket and placed the silver drive on the desk. Nathan picked it up. What is on this? Draft materials, Daniel said. For Monday. Materials Vanessa gave you? Silence answered first. Nathan turned toward her. How did you get them? Vanessa folded her arms. You sent documents to the home office. I had access. That was not my question. She looked down. Nathan felt something inside him become very quiet. He had negotiated hostile acquisitions without raising his voice. He had watched companies lose millions before lunch and still finish the meeting. But this was different. Numbers were impersonal. Trust was not. I want the agreement reviewed independently tonight, Nathan said. Daniel shook his head. By whom? It is nearly 11. Nathan took out his phone. By someone who does not need me to sign before Monday. 40 minutes later, Nathan was sitting alone in Bellamy's private office while an outside attorney reviewed digital copies of the agreement. Vanessa had moved to the dining room. Daniel stood near the hallway window, making calls Nathan could not hear. Emily continued closing tables. She wiped table 12 twice before realizing she had already cleaned it. At 11:31, Nathan's phone rang. He answered immediately. The attorney did not sound alarmed. That somehow made the words worse. A revised control provision had been inserted into an appendix. If the transaction closed under certain financing conditions, voting authority over a significant block of company shares could temporarily shift to a management committee. Daniel chaired that committee. Nathan stared at the dark computer screen. Was this in the version my legal team approved Wednesday? No, the attorney said. The language was added later. Nathan looked through the office window at Daniel. Could I reverse it after signing? A pause. Not easily. Once the financing documents were executed, challenging it could become expensive and complicated. Nathan closed his eyes. Emily's warning returned with uncomfortable precision. Once Nathan signs Monday, he will not be able to undo it. Thank you, he said. He ended the call and remained seated for several seconds. His Swiss watch read 11:38. 3 hours earlier, he had believed the most important decision of his evening was whether to sign early and free his weekend. Now the unsigned document lay on the desk like an object belonging to someone else's life. Daniel entered first. Vanessa followed. Nathan turned the agreement around and tapped the appendix. Who added this? Daniel did not pretend to misunderstand. I did. Vanessa whispered his name, but Daniel continued. The company needs a structure that does not depend entirely on you. Nathan looked at him. So you changed the agreement without telling me. I changed a provision. That transferred authority to a committee you control. Temporarily. Nathan almost smiled at the word. Temporarily. Such a small word for such a large betrayal. And Vanessa? Daniel looked toward her. Nathan did not. He wanted her answer without seeing anyone else's face first. I gave him access to the documents, Vanessa said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Why? Nathan asked. She took a long breath. Because every important decision in your life becomes a business decision. The company decides where you live, when you travel, when we eat, when we postpone the wedding meeting. Daniel said the board needed protection. I thought maybe if you had less control, there would finally be room for something else. Nathan looked at the woman he planned to marry and the man he had called his brother. Their reasons were human. Fear, resentment, frustration, perhaps even concern. But none of those things changed what they had chosen to do with them. You could have told me, he said. Daniel's expression hardened. Would you have listened? The question landed because Nathan did not know the answer. He looked through the glass toward the emptying restaurant. Emily was helping Tyler stack chairs. She had risked her job to tell a stranger one uncomfortable truth. The people closest to him had decided he could not be trusted with theirs. Nathan looked back at Daniel and Vanessa. For the first time that night, his anger gave way to something heavier. Maybe I gave you reasons to believe I would not listen, he said. But you still had a choice. He placed the unsigned agreement into the leather folder and closed it. And so did I. Nathan did not sign anything that night. By 12:14 in the morning, the restaurant was officially closed, the kitchen lights had dimmed, and the last employees were finishing their side work. Daniel stood near the front entrance with his coat over one arm. Vanessa remained beside table 12, turning her engagement ring slowly around her finger. Nathan returned from one final call with outside counsel and placed his phone in his pocket. The Monday meeting is canceled, he said. Daniel looked at him. You are going to delay a transaction this size because of one provision? No. I am delaying it because someone changed that provision without telling me. I told you why. You told me after I found it. Daniel's expression tightened. For 12 years, Nathan had known every version of that face. Exhausted Daniel in the warehouse. Laughing Daniel after their first major contract. Furious Daniel during negotiations. Proud Daniel when Brooks Meridian opened its second distribution center. Nathan had believed history made betrayal impossible. Now he understood that history only made it hurt differently. Effective immediately, you are taking a leave from the company, Nathan said. Daniel stared at him. You cannot be serious. Human resources and outside counsel will handle everything Monday morning. There will be an independent review. You will have every opportunity to explain your decisions. Daniel waited for Nathan to say more. He did not. There was no public humiliation. No shouting across the restaurant. No satisfaction in winning. Only consequences. Daniel finally nodded once. Maybe someday you will understand why I did it. Nathan looked at him with tired eyes. Maybe someday you will understand why the reason does not erase the choice. Daniel left without another word. The front door closed softly behind him. Vanessa watched the rain beyond the glass. For several seconds, neither she nor Nathan moved. Then she slipped the engagement ring from her finger. She placed it carefully on the table between them. Nathan looked at it, but did not reach for it. "I did love you," she said. "I know. Part of me still does." Nathan lowered his eyes. "I know that too." Vanessa swallowed. "That almost makes this worse." "It does." She looked at him, perhaps waiting for anger because anger would have been easier. Nathan had none left to give. "Were you ever going to tell me?" he asked. Vanessa took too long to answer. "That was enough." Nathan nodded slowly. "Then we should not get married." Tears gathered in her eyes, but her voice remained controlled. "No, we should not." She picked up her coat and left the ring behind. Nathan stood alone beside the table after she walked away. A wedding 7 weeks from now had disappeared in less than 3 hours. A friendship of 12 years had changed shape. A business agreement he had almost signed was locked inside a folder under his arm. Yet the strangest thing was that Nathan did not feel powerful. He felt tired. Across the room, Emily was tying a trash bag while Tyler stacked the final chairs. Nathan watched her for a moment. She had returned to ordinary work as though she had not altered the course of his evening. He walked toward her. Emily noticed him and straightened. "Mr. Brooks." "Nathan." She hesitated. "Nathan." He looked toward the front door. "Your manager told me you were supposed to leave 40 minutes ago." Emily glanced at Tyler. "We got behind. Because of me. Because Friday nights are Friday nights." For the first time since 9/17, Nathan almost laughed. Instead, he reached into his wallet and removed several bills. "I want you to take this." Emily looked at the money but did not touch it. "For what?" "For what you did." Her expression changed. Not offended, just certain. "No." Nathan was not accustomed to hearing that word delivered so gently. "Emily, you may have saved me from signing an agreement that could have cost me control of my own company. Then buy yourself a better lawyer." Nathan blinked. Emily's mouth lifted slightly. It was the first trace of humor he had seen from her. He put the money away. "Why did you do it?" Emily looked down at the cloth in her hand. "Because I heard something that did not sound right. That is not enough of a reason to risk your job." "It was for me." Nathan studied her. "Why?" The restaurant had become almost completely silent. Emily glanced toward the dark windows. "My father owned a small hardware store when I was growing up. Nothing fancy. He saved for years. Someone in our family convinced him to put most of it into an investment that was supposed to be safe." Nathan said nothing. Other people knew things were wrong. They noticed paperwork that did not make sense. They heard promises that kept changing. Nobody wanted to get involved. Emily folded the cloth once. "By the time my father learned the truth, the money was gone." Nathan's voice softened. "I am sorry." He recovered. Slowly. That was not the part he talked about most. She met Nathan's eyes. He always wondered why nobody warned him. Nathan looked toward table 12. The engagement ring still caught the light beneath the chandelier. "So tonight you warned me." Emily nodded. "I did not know whether I was right. I only knew I did not want to become one more person who saw something and decided it was easier to stay quiet." Nathan stood there, a billionaire with an unsigned contract under his arm, listening to a waitress explain something no board meeting had ever taught him. Truth did not always arrive from the person with the highest title. Sometimes it came from the person everyone else had forgotten to notice. Nathan reached into his wallet again, but this time he did not take out money. He removed the folded receipt. He smoothed it carefully between his fingers. "I think I am going to keep this." Emily glanced at the blue handwriting and gave him a tired smile. "Then at least let me get you a cleaner copy." Nathan shook his head. "No, this one did its job." For the next 6 days, Nathan did not return to Bellamy's. Emily told herself she did not expect him to. Men like Nathan Brooks had entire floors of offices filled with people whose job was to solve problems before breakfast. Emily had given him a warning. He had listened. That should have been the end of it. By Monday afternoon, Brooks Meridian announced that the transaction had been postponed pending an internal review. Daniel Reed stepped away from his position while outside counsel examined the revised documents. There was no dramatic press conference. No public accusations. Nathan refused to turn a private betrayal into entertainment. When a reporter asked whether Daniel had been dismissed, Nathan gave only one answer. "We are reviewing decisions, not destroying people." The sentence appeared in a business column the next morning. Emily read it while eating cereal at her kitchen counter before work. She stared at it longer than she intended. Her mother, Carol, called 5 minutes later to remind her about a loose porch rail. Life had a way of returning people to ordinary things. On Wednesday, Emily spent her afternoon off at a hardware store buying screws and a new bracket. On Thursday, she worked a double shift. On Friday, at 7:26 in the evening, Nathan walked into Bellamy's alone. He wore no tie. No assistant followed him. No leather folder sat beneath his arm. The host immediately moved toward the best table in the room, but Nathan shook his head. Table 12, if it is available. It was. Emily saw him before he saw her. For reasons she did not understand, she checked whether his coffee cup was already on the table. It was not. She approached with her order pad. Black coffee. Nathan looked up and smiled. It was different from the brief expression she had seen the previous week. Less guarded. You remember. Remembering orders is part of the job. I was hoping I had become slightly more memorable than an order. Emily raised one eyebrow. That depends on whether you plan to sign anything tonight. Nathan laughed. A real laugh this time. Tyler looked over from the service station in surprise. Emily felt herself smile before she could stop it. Coffee, Nathan said. And whatever you recommend for dinner. That is a dangerous amount of trust. I am trying a new approach. She brought him meatloaf with roasted potatoes, one of the least expensive meals on Bellamy's menu and one Nathan had probably never considered ordering. He ate all of it. When Emily returned with coffee, he gestured toward the empty chair across from him. Are you allowed to sit for 2 minutes? Usually not. Nathan glanced toward her manager. I am trying very hard not to use the Billionaire card. Good. It is probably exhausting. You have no idea. Emily remained standing, but she did not leave. Nathan reached into his jacket and removed the folded receipt. The edges were softer now from being carried in his wallet. The review confirmed Daniel had been pushing for more control for months, he said. Vanessa gave him access because she believed I would never voluntarily change. Emily listened. Were they wrong about you? Nathan looked at the cold coffee between his hands. The question did not offend him. That surprised him. Not completely. Emily said nothing. Nathan continued. I spent years believing that providing for people was the same as being present for them. If something was wrong, I fixed it. If someone disagreed, I explained why my answer made more sense. That sounds efficient. It was. He looked up. It was also lonely. Emily leaned lightly against the back of the empty chair. Understanding why someone hurt you does not mean you have to excuse how they did it. Nathan nodded. I am learning that. He had accepted Vanessa's decision to end the engagement. Daniel's future at Brooks Meridian would be decided after the independent review, not by Nathan's anger. For the first time in years, Nathan was allowing questions to remain unanswered for more than a day. Emily noticed something else. His watch was gone. No Swiss watch tonight, she asked. Nathan glanced at his bare wrist. I left it at home. Why? I realized I check it whenever I do not know what to say. Emily smiled. That is an expensive nervous habit. You notice everything, do you not? Not everything. What do you miss? The question caught her off guard. Emily looked toward the kitchen. Sometimes I notice what other people need before I notice what I need. Nathan considered that quietly. That sounds lonely too. This time, Emily had no quick answer. Her manager called her name from across the room. She straightened. I have to work. Nathan nodded. Of course. She took 2 steps before he spoke again. Emily. She turned. Would you have coffee with me sometime when you are not carrying the pot? She studied him carefully. There was no command in his voice. No offer of money. No assumption that she would say yes. Just a man asking a woman a simple question. Coffee, she repeated. Somewhere cheap, Nathan said. Apparently I need practice. Emily looked at him for another second. Sunday morning. There is a diner on Ashland. 9 o'clock. Nathan smiled. I will be there. Emily walked back toward the kitchen, carrying an empty tray against her side. Nathan watched her go, then looked at the folded receipt in his hand. A week earlier, he had thought she had entered his life to warn him about someone else. He was beginning to understand that she had also made him notice something he had spent years avoiding. Himself. Sunday morning arrived gray and cool, the kind of Chicago morning that made the city feel quieter than it really was. At 8:54, Emily pushed open the door of Miller's Diner on Ashland Avenue and found Nathan already sitting in a booth by the window. No tailored suit. No polished conference table. He wore dark jeans, a navy sweater, and the uncertain expression of a man who had arrived early because being late felt unacceptable. A chipped white mug sat in front of him. Emily slid into the opposite seat and looked at the coffee. You started without me. Nathan glanced at the mug. The waitress was persuasive. Emily looked toward the counter. Her name is Linda. You know her? I know people. Nathan smiled. I have noticed. Linda appeared with a pot and filled Emily's cup without asking. Pancakes, she said. Please. She looked at Nathan. And you? He opened the menu again. I have been trying to decide for 12 minutes. Emily stared at him. You run a company with thousands of employees. None of them expect me to choose between biscuits and French toast. Emily laughed, and Nathan realized he liked the sound because it asked nothing from him. No approval. No decision. No performance. He ordered eggs, hash browns, and toast. They talked for almost 2 hours. Not about contracts. Not about betrayal. Emily told him about her mother's porch rail and how she had spent 40 minutes installing a bracket backward before realizing it. Nathan admitted he had once paid a contractor to assemble a bookshelf because he could not understand the instructions. That is embarrassing, Emily said. I built a logistics company and lost to 6 pieces of wood. There were at least 14. By the time they left, the clouds had opened into a light rain. Nathan offered Emily a ride. She pointed toward her Honda parked half a block away. I have transportation. The car started on the 3rd attempt. Nathan stood beneath the diner awning listening to the engine complain. Emily rolled down the window. Do not say it. I said nothing. Your face did. Your car sounds like it is negotiating its retirement. It has character. It has symptoms. She drove away laughing. That became the beginning. Not a dramatic beginning. A Tuesday evening walk along the lakefront. Coffee after Emily's shift. A Saturday afternoon at Carol Carter's house, where Nathan arrived in loafers and left with dirt on his jeans after helping repair the porch rail Emily had mentioned. Carol watched him struggle with a cordless drill for 10 minutes before asking, You really are a billionaire? Nathan looked at the crooked screw. Not in this yard, apparently. Emily laughed so hard she had to sit on the porch step. Nathan did too. Weeks became months. Emily never allowed his money to become the center of their relationship. When he sent a car to pick her up after a late shift, she thanked him and then explained that asking first would have been better. Nathan listened. The next time, he asked. When Emily insisted she could handle everything alone, Nathan did not rush to solve it. He learned to say, Do you want help? Or do you want me to listen? Sometimes she wanted help. More often, she wanted him to stay. Nathan changed in smaller ways too. At Brooks Meridian, meetings became less efficient and more honest. He began asking junior employees what he was missing. He stopped answering his own questions before other people could. The independent review eventually concluded that Daniel had violated company policy and his responsibilities as an executive. Daniel resigned. Nathan did not celebrate. He sent one private message thanking him for the good years and acknowledging that the ending did not erase everything that came before it. Daniel replied with 4 words. I understand that now. Vanessa moved to Seattle several months later. She and Nathan exchanged one final conversation before she left. There was sadness, but no cruelty. Some relationships were not meant to be repaired. They were meant to be understood, forgiven where possible, and released. One evening in early fall, Emily finished her shift and found Nathan waiting outside Bellamy's beneath the same awning where rain had once reflected against the pavement. He held 2 paper cups of coffee. Black, she asked. One black. One with cream for the woman who pretends remembering orders is not impressive. Emily took the cup. They walked toward the river without hurrying. Halfway there, Nathan reached for her hand. He did it slowly, giving her time to choose. Emily looked down at his hand, then at him. You ask more now. I am practicing. She threaded her fingers through his. Keep practicing. Nathan smiled. The city moved around them. Buses stopped. People hurried home. A delivery driver leaned on a horn somewhere down the block. Nothing about the moment looked extraordinary. That was precisely why Emily loved it. Nathan had spent years believing the important parts of life arrived with signatures, announcements, and numbers large enough to make headlines. Emily was teaching him something quieter. A person could change while drinking diner coffee. Trust could grow during ordinary walks. Love did not have to rescue either of them. It could simply make room for both. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. Emily squeezed back. Neither of them said anything. For once, silence was not hiding the truth. It was holding something good. 1 year after the night, everything changed. Nathan returned to table 12 carrying no contract, no briefcase, and no reason to check the time. Bellamy's was quieter than usual, softened by warm October light and the familiar sound of glasses touching plates. Emily was no longer working that evening. 6 months earlier, she had accepted a daytime position helping train new servers, a schedule that gave her more time with her mother and allowed her to take evening business classes at a community college. The decision had been hers. Nathan had offered advice only after she asked for it. That mattered to both of them. Emily arrived wearing a simple navy dress and found Nathan standing beside the same chair where he had once nearly signed away part of his company. "You reserved this table?" she asked. "I was feeling nostalgic. That usually becomes expensive in this restaurant. I checked the prices first." She smiled and sat across from him. Dinner passed without ceremony. They talked about Carol's new porch furniture, Emily's accounting class, and Nathan's ongoing attempt to cook something more complicated than scrambled eggs. He had improved at listening. Emily had improved at accepting help without mistaking it for dependence. Neither transformation was complete. That was what made it real. They still disagreed. Emily hated when Nathan answered work emails during dinner. Nathan worried when Emily refused assistance simply because she wanted to prove she could manage alone. Once, they spent an entire Saturday irritated with each other over a canceled weekend trip. Then they talked. Not elegantly, not perfectly, but truthfully. Their relationship had grown strongest not because conflict disappeared, but because neither of them used silence as a hiding place. After dessert, Nathan reached into his wallet. Emily narrowed her eyes. "If you are about to pay before I see the check, we are having the same argument again." "Not tonight." He removed a folded piece of paper. Emily recognized it immediately. The receipt had faded. The fold lines were worn, and the blue ink was softer than it had been a year earlier. Emily stared at him. "You still carry that?" "Every day." "Nathan, it is an old restaurant receipt. It is the first honest thing anyone gave me that year." Her expression softened. Nathan placed it between them. "I used to think trust meant never questioning someone. You taught me that real trust is almost the opposite. It means being able to hear something uncomfortable without punishing the person brave enough to say it." Emily reached across the table and touched his hand. "You learned that yourself." Eventually, he turned his palm upward and held her fingers. "There is something else I learned." Emily waited. Nathan looked at her with none of the certainty he once carried into every room. "This mattered too much for certainty. I do not need someone who agrees with me. I need the woman who tells me when I am wrong, laughs at my terrible home repairs, makes me eat at diners where the coffee costs $3, and somehow makes an ordinary Tuesday feel like somewhere I want to be." Emily's eyes filled, but she smiled. "That is an unusually long speech for you." "I practiced." "I can tell." Nathan laughed softly. Then his expression became serious again. "Emily, I love the life we have built. I love your mother asking me to fix things she knows I cannot fix. I love waiting for you after class. I love that you still drive that ridiculous Honda. Careful. I even love the Honda. Better." Nathan took a small ring box from his jacket, but left it closed on the table. He did not open it yet. He did not assume. "Do you still want this life with me?" Emily looked at the man across from her. Not the billionaire she had warned. Not the customer at table 12. Nathan, the man who now asked before helping. Who listened when an answer hurt. Who had learned that love was not another problem to manage. She squeezed his hand. "Yes." Nathan breathed out. Emily leaned closer. "But we keep one rule. Anything. We tell each other the things we would rather not hear." Nathan smiled. "Deal." Only then did he open the box. Later, after she said yes again through happy tears, they walked outside beneath the Chicago lights with Emily's hand tucked inside his. Months afterward, they married in Carol's backyard with fewer than 40 guests. Nathan wore no watch. Emily kept her old Honda for another year just to annoy him. Their life was not perfect, and neither wanted it to be. It was honest, warm, sometimes difficult, often ordinary, and deeply theirs. The receipt remained in Nathan's wallet until the ink nearly disappeared, a reminder that the person who changes your life is not always the one who tells you what you want to hear. Sometimes it is the quiet one who respects you enough to tell you the truth, then stays long enough to build something beautiful with it.